The air trembled with a low, pulsing hum, the kind that made the bones feel hollow. Inside the arena of light, thousands of alien nobles floated in their seats, each shimmering with their clan's color, silver, azure, violet. The grand dome stretched above them like a captured nebula, shifting in cosmic hues. And at the center, surrounded by a storm of light, stood the alien Princess Lysera, the most untouchable being of her kind. Her eyes, twin rings of molten gold, carried the weight of 10 conquered worlds. Her expression was calm, but cold. "Next," she said softly, her voice amplified by the hall's living walls. It wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. Her tone carried authority older than steel. Another contender stepped forward, a tall alien prince armored in glistening scales. He bowed, wings folding behind him. "Your Highness," he began, "I bring the fire of my world, the strength of—" Lysera raised her hand. "Show me," she interrupted. The prince roared, igniting in plasma flame that scorched the arena floor. The audience gasped as molten trails danced around him. When he finished, he smiled, confident, proud. Lysera blinked once. "That's all?" The prince froze. The crowd murmured. Lysera turned her back. "Next." One by one, princes from distant galaxies stepped forth, wielding storms, bending matter, singing harmonies that could fracture mountains. But her eyes never changed. No flicker of emotion, no hint of awe, only that quiet disinterest, like a god watching ants perform, until the doors opened for the last competitor. He didn't float. He didn't shine. He didn't even glow. A human walked out. The guards almost laughed, and a soft, ugly sound. A human in the grand arena? The smallest, weakest species in the galactic register? He looked fragile under the lights. Small build, wearing a worn exosuit patched at the seams, but his eyes were steady. "Name?" Lysera asked. He hesitated only a moment. "Elias. Elias," she repeated, tasting the strange sound. "And what do you bring that could impress me, human Elias?" He looked up at her, straight into those golden eyes that had silenced 1,000 worlds. "I didn't come to impress you," he said quietly. "I came to remind you." The silence that followed was almost physical. Even the floating nobles leaned forward. Lysera tilted her head slightly. "Remind me of what?" Elias took off his glove. His skin was scarred, pale, but his hand was steady as he held it out. "Of what it means to fight when you have nothing left to prove." And before she could reply, he knelt, placed his hand against the shimmering arena floor, and closed his eyes. A tremor ran through the light field. The living circuits of the floor began to ripple around his hand, reacting not to power but to something deeper. The entire arena dimmed. "What is he doing?" a noble whispered. Then the walls shifted, glowing with projections, memories. Elias's mind was being shared. They saw flashes, burned cities, humans holding the line against overwhelming odds, a mother shielding her child, soldiers fighting under shattered skies. There was no grandeur, no alien perfection, only pain, hope, and stubborn, fragile love. When the visions faded, silence fell heavier than any applause could have been. Lysera stood still. For the first time, her composure fractured, just slightly. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Elias rose slowly. "We break, we bleed, but we don't stop," he said quietly. "That's what being human means. We don't impress. We endure." Lysera stared at him, at that simple, flawed, impossible creature, and felt something she hadn't felt in a century. Silence. Not from command, not from disinterest, but from something deeper, something she didn't understand yet. In the seats above, the alien nobles murmured uneasily. The princess, their radiant, untouchable heir, had fallen silent before a human. And deep within the storm of her mind, Lysera whispered a thought she would never dare voice aloud. He shouldn't have been able to make me feel that. The arena of light was empty now. The grand seats, once echoing with laughter and arrogance, floated in darkness. The nobles had left in uneasy murmurs, whispering of scandal, of the moment their flawless princess hesitated before a mere human. But Princess Lysera hadn't moved. She stood in the center of the great circle, staring at the place where the human had knelt. The arena's living floor still shimmered faintly, pulsing as if remembering him. The afterimage of his memories, the burning skies, the human faces, still flickered in her mind like embers refusing to die. Why can't I push it away? No one had ever made her feel uncertain. No alien prince, no council, not even her father, the emperor. But that human, Elias, had spoken no grand words, wielded no cosmic power, and yet something in his quiet defiance had burned straight through her calm. A soft voice echoed from the shadows. "Your Highness," Lysera turned sharply. Her guard captain, Valen, stood near the entrance. His crimson armor shimmered like blood under starlight. "The council demands an explanation," he said carefully. "They found your silence concerning," she exhaled slowly. "They would," Valen hesitated. "Permission to speak freely?" "Granted. The human, he's dangerous," Valen said. "Not in strength, but in influence. If word spreads that you were moved by one of them, it could fracture the court's faith in you. You must—" Lysera cut him off with a small gesture. "Bring him to me." Valen blinked. "Bring the human?" Alive now, there was no arguing with her tone. Valen saluted and vanished into the dim corridor. Hours later, the door to her private chamber opened with a low hiss. Elias was escorted inside, hands bound with light restraints that flickered faintly around his wrists. Lysera dismissed the guards. "Leave us." When the doors sealed behind him, the silence returned, heavy, deliberate. Elias stood quietly, observing the towering chamber. The walls flowed like liquid glass, filled with suspended constellations. A soft blue light washed over both of them, painting her features in ethereal glow. "You made quite the impression," Lysera said finally. "My court believes I should erase you." Elias's mouth twitched slightly. Wouldn't be the first time someone thought that. Her eyes narrowed, though not in anger, more in curiosity. "You speak as if you've seen much for someone so young." "I've seen enough," he replied softly. She studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she walked closer, the air shimmering faintly around her form. "Your species fascinates me," she murmured. "So fragile, so small, and yet you defy everything that should have crushed you." He met her gaze without flinching. "Maybe that's why you can't look away." The words landed like a pulse of thunder. For the briefest heartbeat she froze, golden eyes widening. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one dared. "You think highly of yourself," she said finally, her voice cool. "No," Elias said, shaking his head. "I think highly of you. I just don't think you realize what that means yet." Her lips parted slightly. To answer, to retort, she didn't know. But before she could speak, he turned his head toward the star-field wall. "Back home, we look up at stars like those and dream someone's out there listening. Turns out you are. But maybe you stopped listening a long time ago." For the first time in her life, Lysera didn't have a reply. The silence between them was thick, not cold this time, but alive with unspoken questions. She felt something unfamiliar beneath her armor of pride, an ache. A strange, dangerous warmth. Finally she spoke. "You will remain here under observation. Until I decide what you are." Elias smiled faintly. "Fair enough." As he was escorted away again, Lysera remained still. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the echo of something human. When the door closed, she whispered to herself, "What have you done to me, little human?" And for the first time, the arena's echoing silence didn't feel like power. It felt like loneliness. The Royal Observatory wasn't a prison. Not by design. It was a crystal sphere suspended over the palace gardens, open to the night, filled with floating lights and drifting silence. But for Elias, it might as well have been a cage made of beauty. He sat near the transparent wall, staring at the alien stars beyond. Every constellation looked wrong, twisted shapes of unfamiliar galaxies. His reflection floated faintly in the glass, pale and tired. 3 days since the arena. 3 days since the alien princess had not executed him. That alone was making the galaxy whisper. The guards never spoke to him. Drones floated near the corners, their glowing eyes tracking his every move. But each evening at the same quiet hour, the door would slide open, and she would appear, Princess Lysera. No escort. No ceremony. Just her, human, she greeted as always, her voice calm and steady. "Princess?" he replied. The same way. She approached slowly, her footsteps soundless on the glass floor. Tonight she wore no armor, just a pale gown that shimmered like starlight. It made her look less like a conqueror and more like something ancient and lost. I've read your history, she said without preamble. Your wars. Your collapses. Your resilience. She tilted her head slightly. Tell me, Elias, why do you fight when you know you'll lose? Elias looked up at her, meeting her golden gaze. Because sometimes surviving is the victory. She studied him in silence. You speak as if pain is a virtue. He shook his head. No, it's just proof we tried. For the first time, her expression softened, barely. A flicker of something like understanding passed through her. My kind doesn't understand that, she admitted quietly. We are bred to never fail. We conquer or we vanish. There is no middle ground. No struggle worth losing. Then maybe that's what's killing you, Elias said. She blinked. Killing us? You have everything, power, perfection, eternity, but no reason to fight for any of it. You've forgotten what it's like to want something so much it hurts. Lysera turned her gaze toward the stars, the light of them reflecting in her eyes. Want, she whispered. That word feels heavy? Yeah, Elias said softly. It is. Later that night when she left, Lysera didn't go straight to her quarters. She walked the silent corridors alone, her thoughts louder than her steps. Each conversation with him left something behind, an echo that wouldn't fade. She found herself thinking of him when she shouldn't, replaying his words, the simplicity of them. The warmth. The court didn't understand warmth. They understood obedience, hierarchy, perfection. She stopped before a tall mirror. The reflection staring back at her looked like a queen sculpted from light, flawless. And yet she could see it now, the hollowness behind the beauty. Perhaps he's right, she murmured. A faint hum announced another presence. Your Highness, came the voice of Captain Valen, stepping from the shadows. The council grows impatient. They demand to see the human. Lysera turned to him, expression unreadable. No, my princess, with respect, and I said no. Valen hesitated, bowing slightly. The council fears corruption. They believe the human has affected you. He has, she said simply. He reminded me I'm still capable of being moved. The captain's eyes flickered in disbelief. You risk everything for that feeling? Lysera smiled faintly, a dangerous, beautiful curve of her lips. Yes, because for the first time in centuries I feel alive. Meanwhile, in his glass cage, Elias couldn't sleep. The alien stars swirled above him, endless and cold. But one light, faint and distant, reminded him of home. He thought of Earth. Of people who still looked at the sky and wondered if anyone out there cared. And he whispered to the void, not knowing she was standing far away doing the same. Maybe, he said softly, we're not that different after all. The throne hall of the Valyrians shimmered like a living sun. The walls themselves breathed light, golden and cold, pulsing with the heartbeat of an empire that had never known defeat. But today, that light felt brittle. The council chamber was filled with murmurs. Alien nobles, their forms radiant and shifting, spoke in low, urgent tones. At the center sat Emperor Kael'thor, Lysera's father, his presence vast, his voice carrying the gravity of a collapsing star. My daughter's silence, he said, has turned into defiance. No one dared answer. 3 cycles, he continued, and still she shelters the human. Our people question her resolve. Our enemies whisper weakness. At last a voice rose, and smooth and sharp. It belonged to Lord Varen, a counselor whose every word dripped with ambition. Your Majesty, he said, bowing low, the princess's fascination with this creature cannot be permitted to stain our lineage. The human must be removed. The Emperor's golden eyes flickered. Do you volunteer, Lord Varen? If it serves the Empire, Varen said with a sly bow. Then you will do so, the Emperor replied. Quietly. Without my daughter's knowledge, Lysera didn't know about the meeting, not yet. She sat once again across from Elias in the observatory, the faint shimmer of dawn glinting off the horizon of the alien world below. The quiet between them had grown comfortable, alive with unspoken thoughts. Do you ever regret it? She asked suddenly. Elias looked up. What? Being human? Living with all that pain you showed me? He smiled faintly. Pain's part of the deal. You can't love without it. You can't build anything worth having without risking loss. Lysera's gaze softened. We don't have that. Love, I mean. Not the way you describe it. That's a shame, Elias said quietly, because it's the one thing that makes the fight worth it. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of the distant city, the hum of hovercraft, the pulse of living metal, filled the silence. Finally, Lysera rose. "Elias," she said, "I've decided something." He looked up. "I'm taking you to the council." He froze. "You're what?" "They demand to see you," she said. "If I hide you any longer, they'll act without me. I won't allow that." Elias's eyes narrowed. "You think they'll just listen?" "No," she admitted. "But they will see." The next day, the great hall was filled once more. Lysera entered, her robes trailing silver light, Elias walking silently behind her. The nobles shifted uneasily. The human's presence was like a wound against their perfection. The emperor's voice thundered across the chamber. "Daughter, you disobeyed my order." Lysera bowed slightly. "I made a choice." The emperor's gaze slid toward Elias. "Then let us see if your choice has merit. Speak, human. Why should your existence not be erased?" Every eye turned to him. Elias stepped forward. His voice was steady, though soft. "Because I didn't come here to fight you," he said. "I came here because I wanted to understand you. And maybe, I thought, you might want to understand us too." The words rippled through the crowd, half outrage, half confusion. "Understand?" Lord Varen sneered. "You presume we need to understand lesser beings?" Elias met his glowing eyes. Every empire that thought that way ended the same. Empty. The room stilled. Even the emperor's expression faltered. Lysera turned toward her father. "He's right," she said softly. "We've conquered everything, but we've forgotten why. We've forgotten what it means to build something out of hope instead of power." The emperor's face hardened. "Enough!" The light of the hall flared, a warning. Lysera's robes rippled in the energy. Elias took a step closer, instinctively shielding her from the radiance. That single motion, a human protecting a being who could crush him with thought, made the hall go silent again. The emperor's eyes narrowed. "You would die for her?" Elias didn't blink. Without hesitation, Lysera's breath caught, not because of fear, but because she realized he meant it, and somewhere deep inside, something in her heart, long buried under centuries of control, began to crack open. Outside the hall, unseen by both of them, Lord Varen whispered into a communicator. "Phase 2, he said coldly. "Make it look like an accident." The explosion tore through the dawn. For one terrible heartbeat, the Palace of Light became a storm of glass and fire. Screams of alien guards echoed through the corridors, and the air filled with shimmering shards of energy, fragments of walls that once pulsed with perfection. And in the middle of that chaos, Elias. He'd seen the faint shimmer before it detonated. Instinct, that raw human survival reflex, made him shove Lysera to the ground just as the blast swallowed the walkway behind them. The heat seared his back. The floor fractured beneath him. For a moment, gravity didn't exist. Then he hit the ground hard, air ripped from his lungs. "Elias!" Lysera's voice cut through the smoke. She pushed herself up, hair disheveled, eyes wide with something no one had ever seen in her before. "Fear." He coughed, smoke pouring from his lips, his body shaking. "Guess that wasn't part of the tour." "Don't talk," she snapped, dragging him to her. Her hands, and the same hands that had once commanded armies, trembled as they pressed against the wound at his side. Blood seeped between her fingers. Red. Human. Real. Guards stormed into the hall, weapons raised, but one look at her expression froze them. The air itself seemed to obey her rage. "Who ordered this?" she demanded. No one answered. "Who?" The force of her voice cracked the crystal pillars. The guards dropped to their knees. From behind them, Captain Valen stepped forward, helmet in hand, eyes heavy with regret. "It was Lord Varen, Your Highness, he," said the Emperor gave the command. Lysera's breath caught. For a second, she looked as though the air had been pulled from her lungs. "My father?" Elias grabbed her wrist weakly. "Don't," he rasped. "You can't." "Quiet," she whispered, voice breaking. "You're not dying here, human." He gave a faint, pained smile. "That's an order?" "Yes," she said through gritted teeth. "And I don't disobey my own orders." Moments later, the corridor erupted again as soldiers tried to corner them. Lysera lifted her hand, and the world moved. Walls bent, light obeyed. The palace itself shifted under her fury, twisting into a tunnel of molten radiance. Her power had never been this violent. Not for any war, not for any throne, but now she was fighting for one fragile, bleeding human. Elias's head rested weakly against her arm as she carried him through the chaos. "You shouldn't risk this," he murmured. "Your people, they're not my people anymore," she said coldly. "Not if they would murder what they don't understand." She burst into the landing deck, the sky above a storm of fire and alarms. A patrol ship waited, sleek gold guarded by drones. She raised her hand and the drones bowed. "Open it," she commanded. The hatch hissed open, recognizing her genetic signature. She placed Elias inside, connecting him to the medical interface. The system hummed uncertainly, scanning him. "Unrecognized biology," it droned. "Unable to repair." Lysera slammed her fist against the console. "Then use mine, link it." "Genetic incompatibility risk, do it." The chamber pulsed. Energy flowed from her veins into his and light fusing with flesh. Elias gasped, the burn of alien energy coursing through him, but the bleeding slowed. His breathing steadied. Lysera sank to her knees beside him, drained. Her glow dimmed, her voice trembling. "You stubborn, reckless creature. You could have died." He managed a weak grin. "Guess I made an impression, huh?" She laughed, short, shaky, but real. "You made me care," she whispered. The ship's engines roared as it lifted into the clouds, fleeing the palace that now burned behind them. Outside, Varen stood at the shattered balcony, watching the vessel vanish into the storm. His eyes glowed with hatred and fear. "She betrayed the throne for a human," he hissed into his communicator. "Activate the fleet. Bring them down." Inside the fleeing ship, Lysera looked down at Elia, still unconscious but alive. Her hand lingered near his, light flickering between their fingers. For the first time in her long, perfect life, she wasn't a princess. She wasn't a symbol. She was someone who had something to lose, and that terrified her more than any war ever had. The ship drifted silently through the void. No alarms now. No pursuit, not yet. Only the hum of engines and the faint echo of breathing in the small medbay. Elias stirred. His chest ached, his body heavy. For a moment, he thought he'd dreamed it all, in the arena, the fire, the impossible princess who'd carried him through the end of the world. Then he opened his eyes. Lysera sat beside him, her form faintly glowing in the dim blue light. Her usual regal posture was gone, shoulders slumped, hair unbound, eyes distant. She looked human, almost. "You're awake," she said softly without looking at him. "Feels like I got hit by a planet," he groaned. A faint smile flickered across her lips. "You almost did." He blinked slowly, memories rushing back. "You saved me. You saved me first," she murmured. "We're even." Silence filled the room again, but it wasn't cold. It was the kind of silence that hummed with things neither dared to say. Finally, Elias sat up slightly, grimacing. "Where are we?" "Hiding," she said simply. "The outer veil, beyond the Valyrian patrol zones." He nodded slowly. "So we're fugitives." She tilted her head, amused. "That's one way to say it. Another way is free." Her gaze drifted toward the viewport. Beyond it, the stars shimmered, unfiltered, endless. Elias followed her gaze. "They look different from here." "They always do when you're running," she said quietly. He watched her, really watched her. The way her glow flickered softly, the exhaustion in her face, the uncertainty in her eyes. For all her power, she looked lost. "You risked everything," he said. "For me, why?" Lysera's eyes flickered toward him, the question hitting deeper than he expected. She hesitated, then stood, pacing slowly before the starlit glass. "At first," she said, "I told myself it was curiosity. You were different, fragile but unafraid. I wanted to understand how something so small could carry so much fire inside." She turned toward him, voice softening. "But then, when I watched you bleed, when I saw how far you'd go just to protect someone who didn't deserve it," her voice trembled slightly, "I realized I've ruled 1,000 systems and never once felt the way you made me feel that moment." Elias was quiet for a long time. The hum of the ship filled the space between them. "Where I come from," he said, "we call that being human." She smiled faintly. "Then perhaps I envy your kind." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "Careful. It's not easy. We break. We hope, we love. And sometimes it hurts more than dying." Her golden eyes softened. "But you still do it." Yeah, he said quietly. Because what else is there? For a long while, neither spoke. The stars drifted slowly across the window, pale reflections dancing on their faces. Then suddenly, Lysera spoke again, her tone distant. They'll come for us soon. My father won't allow me to vanish. He'll send fleets. Elias nodded. You can still turn back. She shook her head, almost smiling. I've spent centuries obeying, for once. I want to choose. He looked at her, searching her expression. And what do you choose now? She stepped closer, her light faintly touching his skin, warm, not blinding. Her voice was barely a whisper. You? Elias blinked, stunned. The word hung between them like gravity itself. You don't know what that means, he said quietly. I don't need to, she replied. All I know is that when you looked at me in that arena, for the first time I wasn't a princess. I was just someone who wanted to be seen. Elias reached out slowly, taking her hand. Unsure if she'd pull away, she didn't. For the first time, her light didn't blaze or command. It warmed. They sat there hand in hand, two beings from opposite ends of existence, one made of light, one of flesh, both finally understanding what it meant to feel alive. But far beyond the stars, in the throne hall of Valyria, the Emperor's gaze burned through holographic reports. The traitorous ship had been located. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. His voice was cold, final. Bring back my daughter, and erase the human. The stars were burning. Lysera's ship trembled as alarms screamed through the hull, red lights flashing, warning symbols pulsing like angry hearts. Outside, the void itself rippled with the arrival of the Valyrian fleet. Dozens of colossal warships unfolded from hyperspace, gleaming like shards of sunlight, elegant, merciless, and alive with the fury of a betrayed empire. Elias stood beside her in the cockpit, his arms still bandaged, his body weak but his eyes steady. Guess that's your welcome home party. Lysera didn't answer at first. Her gaze locked on the ship surrounding them, her father's emblem glowing across the lead vessel. The Emperor had come himself. Elias, she said softly, I won't let them touch you. He looked at her, the fire in her voice, the grief in her eyes. And I won't let you throw away your life for me. Her lips curved faintly. Too late. The comms panel came alive with the Emperor's voice, deep, ancient, echoing across the stars. Lysera, my daughter, surrender the human. I will forgive your defiance. Lysera closed her eyes, her voice trembling just once before steadying. Father, I can't. You will. The silence that followed was long, heavy enough to bend the stars. Finally, Lysera pressed the comm switch. No, she whispered. I won't be your symbol of perfection anymore. I've seen what we've lost, what we've become. If a single fragile human can show me more strength, compassion, and truth than our entire empire, then maybe we don't deserve to rule. The Emperor's reply was pure ice. Then you are no daughter of mine. The connection cut. Moments later, the first blast struck. The shockwave tore through the void. The ship spun violently, alarms wailing. Lysera's hands flew over the controls, golden light flaring from her palms as she fought to stabilize the systems. We can't outrun them, Elias shouted over the noise. We don't need to, she said, eyes fierce. We end this. End? But she was already standing, moving toward the ship's central core, a glowing sphere of living energy that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. She turned to him once, her expression calm and unbearably gentle. You once said humans endure, she whispered. Now you'll show me how. Lysera, what are you? I can merge the ship's core with my essence, she said. It'll amplify my energy beyond control, enough to blind their targeting arrays, enough to make them stop. But it will. Burn me out, he froze. No, you're not doing that. We'll find another way. There isn't another way. She stepped closer, lifting her hand. He felt her light against his cheek, soft, trembling. You gave me something I've never had, Elias, not obedience. Not power, choice. I can't go back to being empty. Tears burned in his eyes. You don't have to die to prove that, she smiled faintly. I'm not dying. I'm becoming. And before he could stop her, she kissed him. A brief, trembling touch filled with every word neither had time to say. Her light flared brighter, wrapping around him like a breath. Don't forget, she whispered. Even stars envy the warmth of humans. Then she turned and walked into the core. The light exploded. It wasn't destruction. It was transformation. Across the battlefield, Valyrian ships froze mid-fire as an ocean of pure radiance burst from the tiny vessel. It wasn't blinding, it was beautiful. The pulse spread like dawn through the dark, silencing weapons, softening armor, turning every warship's glow into gold. The Emperor's ship faltered, its power fading. And in the stillness, for the first time in his immortal life, he felt Lysera's energy, her soul, spoke through the light. Father. See them, see us. Life isn't about domination. It's about connection. Then the light dimmed. When the glow faded, the fleets had powered down. The stars were quiet. Only one ship drifted, its hull scorched. And inside, Elias knelt in the silent chamber, his face lit by faint, golden motes still floating in the air. He whispered, voice raw. You did it, Lysera. One last spark drifted to his hand, a shimmer of warmth that pulsed once before fading. He closed his fist around it. And you taught me that even gods can love. Years later, the Valyrians would tell stories of the princess who fell silent for a human. And somewhere in the quiet edges of the galaxy, travelers would sometimes see a faint golden light following their ships, as if a star was still watching, still listening, and those who believed said it was her, the alien princess who learned what it meant to be human.